Stand by for broadcast.
You're listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations.
Hello, I'm Flight Lieutenant Peter Lisney, and in this episode we hear about returning to fitness after injury or a break from training. We'll also reheat a few stories, just in case you missed them. But first, see if you can identify this noise. Find out if you're right at the end of this episode. Now, maintaining a high level of fitness is expected of everyone in the RAF. But what happens when an accident, injury or lockdown gets in the way? Our correspondent, SAC Emma Kirwan, spoke with RAF Exercise Rehabilitation Instructors and some of the service people they have helped return to fitness.
It's a fairly stark thing when a doctor comes in and says, you've got a choice. You can opt for this surgery and there is a risk that you could be a quadriplegic, or you could turn the surgery down and you'll probably be a quadriplegic in 7 days.
Coming down onto the last repetition and I ruptured my pec, pulled my tendon clean off the bone.
With being in the military, you're essentially protecting this country. Therefore, ensuring your fitness is up to standard for deployment is mandatory.
I spoke with 4 serving personnel to find out how the pandemic affected their training. My plan was also to find out what impact the closure of Royal Air Force Station gyms has had on the mental health of personnel. But that soon changed after I chatted to Group Captain Crook, whose life was almost changed forever after a bike accident. He told me how his mental health wasn't really affected by the crash or the pandemic, thanks to the support from the Royal Air Force and his family.
Last July, I was out mountain biking in the local woods, and had a bit of a crash, we'll call it that, and ended up sustaining spinal cord damage, which left me with short-term paralysis. I was paralysed from the neck down for about half an hour or so, but ultimately left me with some cracks in my vertebra that required some fairly serious spinal surgery, and it left me bedbound for about a month, really. It was a fairly emotional incident, but it's over in a flash, really. Everything from the evening onwards just seemed to happen so fast, and you wake up in a hospital bed, in the very best possible care, and you just take every day as it comes. I know that sounds sort of cliche, doesn't it? But I've been through some fairly horrendous things, probably professionally, like this, and then since then it's been all about recovery.
So just before we talk about your rehabilitation a bit more thoroughly, the crash happened during the pandemic. I just wondered if you can explain to us what it was like actually at the hospital during that time.
Really busy, and I can still remember getting wheeled into the hospital, being in agony, and then having that odd pause where we have to stop for a COVID test before going any further. And I think by the time we got into the hospital, it was really late at night, because it took them about 3 hours to get me out of the woods. But not having any visitors and stuff was a bit odd. But to be honest, it wasn't the main focus of my thoughts at the time. I mean, it's a fairly stark thing when a doctor comes in and says, you've got a choice. You can opt for this surgery, and there is a risk that you could be a quadriplegic, or you could turn the surgery down and you'll probably be a quadriplegic in 7 days. So it's a fairly sobering choice to have. So I was able to get hold of my family on the phone, but it wasn't necessarily a difficult choice to make, and you just got to sort of mentally prepare yourself for the worst, I suppose. But it's a horrible realization when you've lived your whole life, and central to everything that makes you up and your character is physical activity and sport, and to come out the end of it through having been through the decision is bad. But luckily, I haven't actually had to face the reality of it.
It's quite something, the fact that you've defied the odds against you, really. What has your recovery process been like, and how have you been supported by the exercise rehabilitation instructors in the Royal Air Force?
The physio treatment was the first really basic building blocks and getting the mobility in my hands and neck. And since then, really, it's all been about building up my neck strength, building up mobility, starting from scratch, really. Getting strength back in my arms, legs, and really working hard on my neck as well. So weekly sessions, everything from hitting the gym, supervised gym work to yoga and Pilates, of all things.
Can you tell me about any milestones that stick in your mind during your recovery?
Pull-ups were central to all my training. I've always seen that as a sort of a key marker of fitness, and I can remember not being able to do a single pull-up or anything like that, or even lift my arms above my head. And then about 3 months later, having not attempted any pull-ups but done all the program to walk into the gym, just to sort of point the chin-up bar and say, right, let's do it, let's go for it. Just doing that first pull-up, I could remember like it was yesterday. That's a really sad thing to say, isn't it, doing one pull-up? But it was a really big moment, yeah.
So it sounds like a pretty big moment to me. On moments, actually, how much emotional support, not just physical support, did you receive from the exercise rehabilitation instructors?
I'm not a particularly emotional guy, but for me, it's about the practicalities. So the team were definitely concerned about the emotional support, but I think luckily family was there for me. And so for me, what I wanted from the team was that practical support, but it was absolutely there, yeah. But I think them being RAF guys, there was an empathy there, and they totally understood the position I was in. So I suppose it was implicit, yeah.
RAF fitness tests are taking place again. You've actually done yours, sir. So how do you feel looking back at how far you've come after having that really, really bad accident and now being able to do what you love, which is exercise and continue to work?
It's I haven't really reflected on it, but it's amazing really to think what could have been. And I've been so busy since then that I just haven't thought about it. But I'm really thankful, really lucky, really grateful to all those who've helped me and been understanding, and to the team who've sort of been there every step of the way, pushing me on where needed and holding me back as well, also when needed. Huge relief, I suppose, and thankfulness. Yeah.
And were the exercise rehabilitation instructors really important in getting you to where you are today, do you think?
I think to the journey I've been on, 100%, absolutely vital. The NHS, for the fantastic organisation it is, it just couldn't have provided the support, the dedicated, personalised support I've had from the ERIs, not in the slightest. So yeah, absolutely critical, I think, to getting someone back at their feet, getting them back to work. They are absolutely focused on what they do, and want to make us the best we can be, and that's critical, really critical. That's what goes through their DNA, to make us as fit and as strong and as confident physically confident as we possibly can be.
Well, I've learned during our interview that you love fitness. So when will you next be in the gym?
I'll be back in the gym in about an hour's time.
Corporal Kinister, thank you for joining me. We've heard from Group Captain Crook that he was supported by exercise rehabilitation instructors after his crash. You were actually one of them. Can you talk to me about what your job role is within the Royal Air Force, firstly?
So depending on the individual that we see, our main specialty is rehabilitating musculoskeletal injuries, and depending on an individual who is referred to us, we would look also at the physiotherapist's recommendations and the doctor's recommendations, because you're always part of that multidisciplinary team. And as exercise rehabilitation instructors, we specialize in prescribing exercises as a form of medicine to get individuals back to their fully functional roles and overcoming their musculoskeletal injuries.
Did you have to adapt your exercises for the group captain because of the pandemic?
So exercises generally during the pandemic, with the gyms closed, you have to be quite adaptable and flexible in terms of exercise prescription. Exercises you would prefer to prescribe in a gym-based setting, you would have to change to a home-based setting. So the exercises I would prescribe during this time would be exercises that an individual could safely complete during whilst also being at home and also isolating. That was quite challenging, but again, working closely with the physios and my own knowledge and experience, I think we were able to successfully achieve that for this individual.
You're obviously very professional. Do you ever get emotionally attached to your patients?
You do your best not to try and get too obviously emotionally involved with the amount of people that you do see. You do build a rapport with them. You do get a very good working relationship and understanding with the individuals that do come and see us, and that rapport is especially important for developing that ability and that trust for the individual or the patient to progress further with their rehabilitation and hopefully achieve their desired goals.
How important are the exercise rehabilitation instructors within the RAF?
Having rehabilitated individuals who generally are desk-bound to individuals who fly aircraft, the exercise rehabilitation instructor's role plays a very big, vital part in allowing personnel in the Royal Air Force to be functionally fully operational and fully functional in their operational role, and ultimately can deliver one piece of the puzzle of air power, and it delivers a very small but crucial element of allowing the Royal Air Force to deliver their full operational capability and achieve the air power that they do throughout the world.
RAF fitness tests are now taking place. How involved are the exercise rehabilitation instructors in that process of getting personnel ready to take them?
Certainly it's the PTIs that do conduct the normal physical training instructors on a station that are responsible for administering the RAF fitness test. The exercise rehabilitation instructors are responsible to their patients to use that as the ultimate objective marker to see if an individual can be deemed as fully deployable and fully operational in their role.
Is it beneficial that the RAF fitness test is up and running again, do you believe?
Absolutely. In terms of that measurement for what the Royal Air Force uses, it's a very, very important way of assessing that our individuals are, and the people that make up the service, they are physically able and robust enough to meet the requirements to perform their operational roles, either domestically or abroad. So the fact that the fitness test is back up, certainly from an assurance point of view, the fitness test being back up is a very big positive.
Just because you're an expert in fitness doesn't mean you can't suffer an injury yourself, as I soon found out when chatting to Sergeant Love, also an exercise rehabilitation instructor based at RAF Hulton. I'll say no more.
About 4 months in, I was doing a bench press session. I hadn't bench pressed in a while, and incidentally, the strength was still there, to be fair, in that movement. And people might find this when they come back to running. They might find actually their running fitness might still be there. So I thought, you know what, that's okay. Let's put a bit more weight on, as you do. Coming down onto the last repetition of that movement, and I ruptured my pec, pulled my tendon clean off the bone, and that was that. So that set me on a journey. This is last August. It's the first time I've ever really been injured. So as an ERI, they're rehabilitating people, hearing stories, obviously being humble, having loads of humility as you do as an ERI. It was the first time I thought, I'm going to have to go on this journey and see if what I'm practicing actually works. So I was in surgery about 2 weeks later. I managed to get to Northampton General, and I was, again, pretty lucky in how quick I was seen. Obviously, with the nature of the injury, it needed to be fixed fairly quickly. So I was under the knife as of August the 28th last year. It was like a really, really, really strong elastic band going pop in your shoulder. The swelling came out pretty much straight away. I had blood pooling all down my left arm. That all traced down to my forearm. You could see the tendon hanging below the armpit. Effectively, your pec completely drops by about 2 inches on that left-hand side. So, but like I say, that set me on a journey to going through what I'd seen patients go through, and well, how was I going to deal with it?
How did you deal with what happened? And was your background beneficial at all?
First of all, I think I was obviously mentally prepared. I knew what was coming, and I knew that I could rehabilitate myself. I knew that I had the fortunate situation where I had the knowledge to understand what had happened, how it needed to be fixed. Not that makes it any easier, because I've still got to listen to the body. You can't speed up the body's processes. So having spoken to the surgeon, they give me their guidelines post-surgery, and I'd probably say this is for patients the hardest time, because the restrictions on me were pretty severe. I was in a sling for 6 weeks, which I couldn't take my arm out of that sling or move it for 6 weeks. I slept in the sling. I showered with the sling on. I literally couldn't move my arm at all. I couldn't contract my chest for 6 weeks, mainly to allow the tendon, which is fixed in with anchors, to basically set itself against the bone. At that point then, that's when realistically the sort of physiotherapy and ERI rehabilitation comes in at the 6 week point for this particular injury. Obviously the first time moving your arm, having not moved it for 6 weeks, muscle mass has dropped off. Mobility is really, really restrictive. Pain was manageable, wasn't too bad, but obviously within the restrictions that I was given. At the time, I could only move my arm about 20 degrees to the side and probably about 60 degrees to the front. That was my limitations at that point. And then effectively, it was just trying to put into play what I would have been giving patients to see, is this going to work? Which is actually quite a humbling, and it was a good experience. It was a positive experience for me. I had to deal with the knowing that my fitness will drop, my strength will drop, but I can get it back. Being signed off work for a prolonged period of time, trying to keep myself mentally and physically occupied. I've got 2 daughters and wife at home as well, so my daughter was off school at the time, being taught from home, so it was an all-in intense experience. The support, I guess, the education that I had in the injury enabled me to see the light at the end of the tunnel, really. So I think anybody who was in this situation who maybe didn't have that, by just speaking to their friends, family, speaking to their practitioners, their physio, their doctor, their ERI. I also reached out, incidentally, first time I've ever really used Instagram, I'd say, but I found a video on YouTube of a guy in America who'd had a similar injury. So I emailed him on Instagram to say, how was it for you? And what were you doing in 12 months post-injury? He was nice enough to get back to me and say he was doing this, and this by 12-month point. So I thought to myself, well, if he can, I can.
Did you struggle at any point during your recovery process?
I had some low days, naturally, but there was a lot going on at home that kept me busy. And I think that probably helps in a lot of conditions, in many respects, really. Support, network, and finding routine and purpose always helps. The services that are out there for personnel within the military are second to none. Like, they are superb. The speed at which you can be seen, the care that you can be given, it can't be equalled in the civilian world outside of professional sport, in my opinion. It is really, really good.
As you've now suffered an injury, do you think you're more empathetic towards your patients?
It's definitely, I've opened my mind to what other people are going through. I felt like I was already like that anyway. I wasn't always like that. The PTI 12 years ago that I was at the Finley gym during phase 1 training maybe wouldn't have had as much sympathy for people. I hadn't been through the same life experiences of marriage, childbirth, moving all over the country to out of areas to really cast myself on that. So I've definitely changed. The last 12, 14 years have changed me massively. And I can always take people at face value, really. Listen to their situation and try and help them. It's very easy to say, well, I can do it, you can do it, but not everyone's the same.
As you've just heard, fitness tests are back on, meaning that personnel need to ensure they're going to pass. So I caught up with Corporal Morgan, a physical training instructor based at St Morgan, to find out what tips he's got to do exactly that.
Injuries are common because humans, we like to put ourselves under stress, whether physically or mentally. You know, every time you step into the gym for a workout, you are conducting stress on your body. So if you're trying to get stronger, that's going to involve putting some resistance through your body. And if you're not up to standard, then there is always a greater chance of injuring yourself. So what you should learn really is do not jump in the deep end straight away when you haven't had time recently to that load, because obviously gyms have been shut during the COVID period. So if you are looking to get back into strength training and that's your jam, shall we say, then yeah, don't go back to those old weights that you could once lift. Be realistic with your approach.
How do you feel about gyms now being back open?
It's good to see people, have also missed it. That's my initial reaction here at RAF St Morgan. We've had, people buzzing to get back in. It's great to have that buzz around station and actually get some human interaction going between the PED flight and station personnel. There's no harm in listening to what I class as an expert, someone who's spent years in this field of practice, someone who's worked with multiple cases of people. Let them expand their knowledge set onto you. So classes is a great way to obviously learn techniques of specific exercises, but then also how to change your exercise regime to benefit you. So if you want to take up running, but you currently hate running, a PTI who specialises in running could give you tips so you begin to enjoy running.
Fitness tests were paused because of the pandemic, but they're now taking place again. What advice have you got for RAF personnel who will need to take one?
Staying ready for the fitness test, even though it was suspended during the lockdown period, should have been something in the back of personnel's mind. My advice for getting back into running, press-ups and sit-ups is just to carry out action, right? They always say action rules out any doubt. Well, start incorporating those free movements into your training regime 2 to 3 times a week. So whether that's just running or walking, because obviously you've got the rock foot walk as well, and then just some muscular endurance sets, shall we say, of press-ups and sit-ups. And the advice I give to personnel is do some intervals. So 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off of shuttle runs, 3 sets, then followed by 6 seconds on, 6 seconds off of push-ups, and finish up with some sit-ups, okay? Because then you're exposing yourself just to some volume. I've seen it. I've seen people turn up to fitness tests and the anxiety is through the roof because they haven't practiced, they haven't been running, they haven't been doing their press-ups or their sit-ups.
This might sound like a bit of a silly question being in the military, but why is it so important that RAF personnel do get their fitness back up to scratch if it has dropped off at all?
I can't express this enough. At the end of the day, we are in the military, okay? And with being in the military, you are essentially protecting this country. So therefore, ensuring the fitness is up to standard for deployment is mandatory. That mindset should be natural from day one when you signed up. Okay, when you visited the AFCO, they would have told you that. Queen's Regulations 430 state this, hence why there is a disciplinary action with personnel that fail their yearly fitness test. And they are conducted a year, and obviously we do reward those that are fitter and look after their fitness by making them conduct their RAF fitness test once every 2 years. Being in a good physical condition usually comes with an improved mindset, improved happiness, improved pride. You can improve your work rate and just your self-confidence. So why wouldn't you want to incorporate exercise 2 to 3 times a week minimum? Being in the military, you have allocated times to visit the gym during the working day. And the reason why that's there is because being fit is so important in case you are deployed.
Corporal Morgan there talking about the return of the RAF fitness test and why it's so important for serving personnel to be fit and healthy. What you didn't hear during that chat was when I actually admitted to Corporal Morgan that my fitness had dropped off during the pandemic. But after all of these chats, I'm feeling very inspired and I better go for a run now myself. Thanks for listening.
I'm LAC Victoria Andrews with Reheat on Inside Air. Personnel from 617 Dam Buster Squadron have been at sea as they undertake intensive training aboard the aircraft carrier HMS Queen Elizabeth. Exercise Strike Warrior is UK Lightning Force's final preparation ahead of Carrier Strike Group 21, the inaugural deployment of the Queen Elizabeth, which will see personnel from RAF Marham travel to the Mediterranean, Middle East and Indo-Pacific regions. RAF Marham Station Commander Group Captain Jim Beck.
We've been preparing for CSG 21 since 2018. We've been through Akatiri, Red Flag, and a massive period of preparation to get our jets ready to go to war. We've declared initial operating capability, so we can go, but we know we can improve on our transition to full operating capability in a couple of years' time.
Jointly crewed by the Royal Air Force and Royal Navy, 617 Squadron is working closely with the United States Marine Corps F-35 Squadron, who will also join the deployment. A demonstration of the close cooperation and shared interests which exist between the UK and the United States. As the COVID vaccination rollout continues at pace here, 39 Squadron, who are based in Nevada, were lucky enough to be offered surplus vaccinations from their US counterparts. Wing Commander Fred Wigglesworth, 39 Squadron, has this message for Air Force personnel.
When we go into hazardous situations in the military, we protect ourselves. We wear body armour, we use respirators, we take malaria pills in jungles, we use a combi pen if we're exposed to nerve agent, we wear immersion suits in cold water, and we inoculate against yellow fever, anthrax, cholera and all the rest. And when a worldwide pandemic kills millions around the world, we should put our COVID armour on so that we can run towards that danger and be protected. So get the jab and let's get on with our jobs.
And finally to sport, RAF reservist Phil Hall has found himself in the top spot of the Junior World Rally Championship standings. In a brand new partnership with fellow Briton John Armstrong and their first competitive race together, Hall guided the pairing to a groundbreaking win at the Croatia Rally Closed Road event. He becomes the first British co-driver to win a round of the FIA Junior World Rally Championship since 2014. That's Reheat on Inside Air.
I'm SAC Simon Ross with this episode's Name That Noise. That was the sound of doors closing at RAF Benson's D hangar in South Oxfordshire. The Type C hangar was most famously home to the King's Flight. Later renamed the Queen's Flight, many members of the royal family learnt to fly from aircraft housed in that hangar. although at the time the hangar doors were opened by turning a handle rather than pressing a button. The handle was inserted into each section of the door one at a time, manually winding them open and closed. The Type 126 sliding doors measure 45.7 metres wide by 10.6 metres high. Similar doors were also installed at RAF Leeming and RAF Lucas, although they're not quite as high, measuring at just 9 metres. It was thought that the doors couldn't be replaced given their age and the structure of the hangar. However, engineers were delighted when the work was undertaken on all 4 hangars in 2012.
That's all for this episode of Inside Air. Please give us a review and subscribe on your favourite podcast app, and join us again soon.
You've been listening to Inside Air, a behind-the-wire view of the Royal Air Force, its people, technology and operations. If you're serving in the RAF and have a story for us, please speak to your unit media and communications officer. Inside Air is written and produced for the Royal Air Force by RAF Media Reserves.